So that's a CodeZone, and I'm just making sure I've been rushing to get here, making sure everything's set up and ready to go. Looks like we've got people here. Hello Magetsub, hello Dragoneye, and yes, you may have noticed by the title, it's just too hot to do any coding today. And I have included temperature cam next to my beautiful visage up there. Which tells us that currently I'm indoors, I have my window open, and it's 27.6 degrees Celsius. It's too hot to do any programming. So, I thought what we'd do is maybe do a bit of artwork, do a little bit of talking and chatting. We'll see who turns up, because not many people know that this is going on. And we'll just take it easy, a nice chilled out hour. Little bit of updating perhaps on where Space Thing is, get the art package up and running, maybe draw some spaceships. I even have, well, it's not quite a beer, it's a non-alcoholic beer to enjoy. Yes, text editor is very good. I'm enjoying text editor, and I will be talking about text editor because there's quite a few interesting problems that it needs to solve. So you can type in, you know, it behaves just like a regular text box, and that's really what it was about. So, you know, I've been doing the GUI stuff, the GUI PegX for the Space Thing and Pixel Game Engine in general, and I wanted the text box to be actually quite versatile. So I've built a standalone application to sort of experiment with how do you handle the mouse in these environments. I think if I press, yeah, there we go. So it can also, it's actually working in proportional font mode. And I'm working on mouse selection next. I've not done that yet. So I can place the cursor in the right place with the mouse, and that's fine. It goes where you expect it to go. In both modes, which is interesting. There's an interesting algorithm there. But I need to do it so I can do mouse selection next, and that's actually quite tricky. I've not implemented that just yet. So pretty cool. We could add multiple cursors. Do we want to add column editing? Maybe, maybe not. Apostolisk, hello. Yeah, we're having a chilled out stream tonight. We're not necessarily going to be coding too much. It's too hot. In fact, can you see on my... yes, you can. So my monitors don't have very good vertical... vertical viewing angle. So I have to look up at that monitor. It's all very dark and sort of distorted colours. You think we should turn it into an IDE, do you, Dragoneye? Maybe. That would be quite fun. It would be good to sort of just try it. I mean, it's not that difficult to turn Notepad into something that can call a compiler. Alter, hello. Gruffler, hello. Yeah, we're just taking it easy tonight. Not going to necessarily be going into any deep code. I might get the art package up, mess around with some graphics for something, but just going to take it easy and chill. Standard int. Hi David, what have we got there? The next gen IDE? Well, it will be. It seems to be. It's a little test prototype. I know people will be joining the stream, sort of trickling in. We'll be repeating a few things tonight. You know, I've been working on the GUI for the Space Thing. Well, I wanted a sophisticated way of handling the text in the text box. So this is a multi-line text box. Which can, you know, do things you'd expect a text box to do. It works for proportional. It works for fixed width font. Proportional looks okay, but you don't want to code in proportional fonts, do you? And I've not added yet sort of mouse selection, but you can position the cursor accurately in the text, which is actually quite useful for editing. And it's not a great deal of code. In fact, let me see if I can pull up some of the code already. Let's have a look. Where is the code? Code. Let's pull that over here. I'm going to pull out the file. Where's the source file? Text editor. There we go. Let's pull text editor. Can we put that on there? There we go. So there's not actually a great deal to it, and I think it'll make an interesting video in its own right. And to those just joining, you can see temperature cam. At the top there, temperature and humidity. I've got these little things all over the house, and this is with my window open. It's just too hot. It's too hot to be pleasant. Oh right, we've got quite a few people have just joined. Hang on. We'll get to catch up. Alex, what the fudge is this? We're having a relaxed stream tonight. Not going to be doing much coding. We're going to talk about code, do a bit of a Q&A if you want, whatever. We're just going to take it easy because I've got myself some alcohol-free beer because I'm a nerd, and I'm going to be just sort of enjoying the chat, really. I know if you came expecting hardcore algorithms tonight, it's too hot. It's too hot. So we're going to take it easy. Hello, Jerry. Oh, the Speedy. Hello, Speedy. It's Pim. Hermes, hello. RHK, yeah, another V-clone. So it's quite interesting. I mean, it's surprising. So I wanted to sort of show some of this code. I will be making a video about this, I think, later in the year, because it does cover a lot of interesting little things that I wanted to sort of demonstrate. There's a lot of algorithms in it. Well, I say a lot. There's enough to make a good half-hour video out. So there's maybe 5 or 6 what I think are curious algorithms about it. And it's also something that pops up a lot on the Discord server. How do you handle sort of text input? And everybody goes, "Oh, it's really difficult," and it isn't really difficult. There's some curiosities you need to think about. So, for example, here is you've got to scan through the keys. So here I'm just scanning literally through the keys in the array of Pixel Game Engine keys. And I check to see if the key has been pressed. I mean, it's as simple as that. There's no real sensible way to do it otherwise. Put that formatting right there. And I can check for the case, depending on whether the shift key is held. And all I'm doing, really, the text, it's just a standard string. I actually use iterators to do a lot of the work. So working out where the mouse is and working out where we're inserting text and things, it's actually using iterators. And iterators are not something I use that much on the channel, mainly because they can be a bit complicated. You can shoot yourself in the foot with iterators, I think. Christoph, you're not way late. It's okay. We started a little late. We'll let it run for a little bit. Peter Parker, congratulations on your baby one. Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. No, I appreciate that. She's doing very well. I mean, of course, we have a newborn in a heat wave. So it's probably one of the reasons I'm drinking beer and not coding tonight. It's just too hot. It's gone up the temperature. 27.7 degrees. Brilliant. Right. Phil Boswell has ads. Yes, some of you will have ads. I don't run ads, as you know. It just happens. It's just a thing. Mega Rev is here. Dandestein 27.6 as well. James, you're coding an editor in PGE that can write PGE code. Yes, I guess we could. So yes, there are interesting things. So when you're deleting text, how do you handle things like new lines, that sort of thing? Relative to the mouse. So that's interesting algorithm stuff. And we've got bits of standard library here we don't see very often, things like standard advance. So I think this will make a good video. Erasing stuff was a bit tricky. Erasing stuff out of containers is not as trivial as it should be. I think the committee have got things wrong there. It should be easier than it is. Misread the emails 1 hour ago. Yeah, I know some people get emails, don't they, about these things going on. I do always announce on the Discord server. I should announce on Twitter as well, because I know that there's a schedule on Twitch. I know some people have it automatically set up that it'll load up Twitch for them. As you can imagine, I've been a bit hectic as of late. Has it cooled down there a bit? No, it has not. It's gone up 27.7. It was 27.6, so it's going up. That might just be because I'm in the room now, heating it up with all the hot air that I am emitting. Is this Celsius? This is Celsius. Yes. Saucy 63. Good evening. How is JavidX 10 doing and the cloning chamber? The cloning chamber is very well, and JavidX 10 is struggling with the heat, but other than that, gaining weight, being noisy, all the things that they should be doing. She's not coded anything yet, so we're still fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Ethereal, greetings. It's 27 inside with the window open, so it's brutal. You make C++ look easy. Well, maybe I possibly. It isn't easy. I've just been doing it a long time, but also I don't necessarily do it the perfect way either. With C++, there's many ways to achieve the same goal, and everybody has slightly different goals. My goal is always to write code which other people can read. That might not necessarily be the best code, but I think it's useful for people to try and understand it. Yeah, pressing enter. Now that's interesting. Because it occurred to me that I can't just represent all the text as a string. I have to represent it as a sequence of lines. And so it was interesting then to know how to break up the lines and handle the insertion of these particular characters. Because if you don't, enter gets pressed, I don't store a /n in the string, for example. I actually do physically want it to be a different line. I need that in order to do things like the mouse selection. I need to know where things are on the screen. Yeah, so it just ended up being a nice sort of exercise in a lot of standard library stuff. So I think definitely going to be a video. But that's it. There's the whole text editor there, including the guff and quite a bit of white space. It's about 250 lines of code. I was quite pleased. So let's pull up the text editor, just for those that are joining in and haven't seen it. So this is just a Pixel Game Engine window as expected. So we can stretch it. There we go. At the moment, there's no way to actually scroll the text up and down, but you can position the cursor wherever you want in the text. You can start typing things in. I've not got numbers yet. Numbers don't work to type in. I think if I can type in capitals, I can. I can use the arrow keys to move forwards and backwards. I can't do up and down yet, so that's an interesting problem I've not solved yet. But I can do... Oh, I implemented tabs as well. Yes, so tabs exist. That's good. Tabs cheat, though. They just insert spaces. So you have to untab the old-fashioned way. But good enough for a text editor in a GUI. Are you going to have it checked for caps lock? Yeah, I probably should. That's a good point, actually. Yes, I will have it probably checked for caps lock. It doesn't at the moment, but definitely useful. Why do you not have AC in Europe? Because it's only hot for 1 week a year. 27 internal temperature. It's very comfortable. Oh no, it's too hot. I mean, you can see I'm bright pink. Far too hot. Are we writing a code editor for you to attach Lua to the spacing? Hey, well, that's a great idea, though, isn't it? We could do that, and we could, in future, we could look at syntax highlighting algorithms because they're quite interesting too. Without delving into sort of regex and all that nastiness, how can you do sort of token parsing? Oh, good stuff. Bahamut, KOTD, I'm catching up with the chat, sorry. Since you made a software emulator of the NES CPU, do you know if it's possible to use a 6502 and make a discrete version of the CPU? Do you mean sort of actually physically build a 6502? It certainly is. There's a YouTuber, is it Ben Eater? Is that the right one? He physically, did he make a 6502? I can't remember. He made an 8-bit CPU, but I think, yes, you can do it. To make a discrete version of the CPU. I'm not quite sure what that means, other than actually building it up out of transistors manually. Hello World 56, hello. I'm curious why you can't pass an index into vector arrays. It seems needlessly hacky. Yeah. That's what I was just mentioning there, how far behind I am. That the erase and remove stuff in C++, it's all a bit of a mess. Here's my text cursor class you made for the text field you demonstrated back in the day. I remember, yes, you did do. You did something like that, didn't you? Let's have a look. Oh, can barely see that. Let's zoom in a bit there. Yeah, so this is my GetSubs version of a text editor, and I remember seeing the GIFs and videos of this working. So you didn't do it with lines by the looks of it. It looks like you... it wasn't. It was a single text field, wasn't it? It didn't actually have multi-line capability. I remember, and it worked very well because you had the highlighting, which I've not implemented yet. How am I alive? Exactly, right? It's gone up again, 27.8. And we'll keep doing this. It's predicted tonight to get to about 29. It's currently 8:15 in the evening, my time. What about Unicode symbols? No. Now, this is the restriction that I'm going to be placing. Because it's Pixel Game Engine, I've only got the capabilities for Pixel Game Engine character types. And that's the basic visible keyboard one. So there's no sort of extended symbols. Why do you need a text editor? Did I just do it for fun? Yeah, I just did it for fun. I'm building a text editor for my current ongoing project because, if I pull up Space Thing, I've been working on the GUI a little bit here. Let's see if this even starts up. Because one of the most useful controls on any type of GUI is the list box. which I have here. So in the last episode, we sort of demonstrated we had this scroll bar functionality that we made. And once you've got a scroll bar and a panel, you can then start creating things like list boxes. So right now I've made it so that when we select on a planet, it adds, for some reason it adds 2 on the first one, I don't know. But we can select these. It still needs a bit of cosmetic, a bit of tender love and care at the moment. So I'm just sort of trying to fill it up with data. Let's move that one out of the way. Just so it can sort of overflow and go into the scroll a little bit. So it's currently a work in progress. It's not there, but once you've got a list box, you've got a very powerful control because a list box can then be easily manipulated into being all sorts of other things. There we go. So now I can scroll. In fact, I didn't implement mouse wheel yet, but I can pull that up and down. And scroll up and down. We can change the selection and things. So this, you could change this, for example, to have checks at the front or at the end, and so you can have it into a checklist box. You could get rid of the scroll altogether and have radio buttons and have it so you can only have one thing selected at a time. It becomes quite a versatile tool. It can also be a replacement for drop-down menus because they behave very similarly, and I quite like that idea that we've got this sort of one-size-fits-all mega GUI component which we can just customize with lightweight wrappers to do all sorts of other things. Why not use /T for this? Is for the tabs for the text editor, because the reason actually is a little bit more subtle. It's the text estimation of size algorithm doesn't take into account the tab character as being different. Now that's a fairly easy fix to make, but then tabs don't work like that. Tabs are not actually just a fixed number of spaces. They tab to columns on the screen, and that's actually a bit more fiddly. Tab is interesting. Have you ever sort of dig into how tab is done? Yeah, Benny, God, I am quite behind here. Sorry about that. Doesn't NES have an 8-bit architecture? It does have an 8-bit architecture, but it has a 16-bit address bus, so, you know, all bets are off. I'd argue, we could argue that the NES was actually a 16-bit console, but there you go. Quite lovely temperatures. Are you insane, Diego? That's insane. Jevin, it's just the text cursor class, so it's very handy. Okay. 29. Yeah, at night. So, you know, for some reason in the UK, it gets sort of hot. It peaks about 5 or 6 o'clock, and at the moment we've got this really unusual heat wave. There's no wind at all, right? So everything's just heating up all day, and it doesn't cool down. It gets cool again about 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's what time I get up now. So. Tetris version 1 finished by Peter there. Very good. Get it on the show your stuff on the Discord. Let us see it. Yeah, I think you're right, RHK. I'm actually a fan of saunas and steam rooms. I find them very relaxing, but I think they're relaxing because you know you can get out. I think I'll get around to doing something like WPF. I don't like using sort of HTML elements and XML ways of describing GUI frameworks. I just don't like it. I'm too old-fashioned. I'm not prepared to change. Text size estimation standard int. It depends on whether you've got proportional font or not, and there's a little bit of a cheat there. In fact, we can pull that up. We can discuss that. That's what we're doing tonight. We're just sort of taking it easy and discussing whatever we want to discuss. So let's find the Pixel Game Engine. Let's talk about what's going on with the font. So this is a question that actually pops up quite a bit: is how does the font work in the Pixel Game Engine? I need to find it. Usually you can see it, but the file's got so big. There it is. I don't know why it's all sort of greyed out and things, but it is. Right, yeah. So this is the Pixel Game Engine font. One of the limitations I had when I was thinking about the Pixel Game Engine is I want sort of a consistent experience across all different platforms, and it's no good then relying on the platforms having a particular font that you want them to have. So I thought, well, what I need to do is include a bitmap font into the Pixel Game Engine. And of course, you can't just store binary data directly in a source code file, because binary data could contain symbols which are valid syntax, things like semicolons or the quotation marks themselves, and you could end up with this big messy clump of sort of escape sequences, which are no good to anybody. So actually, what this is it's a variation of, I think it's like a base 64 implementation. So it works in 6-bit chunks. Because the bitmap itself is only binary. It's black or white pixels, the presence of character or background. And it looks at the image of the whole font, which is basically a small bitmap with all of the letters in, all equally spaced, all 8 by 8 pixels. And it then looks at that in 6-bit chunks and takes 4 of those 6-bit chunks to assemble like a 24-bit word, or something like that. And once we've got those 24 bits, we can then break that down into these character bytes, because we can offset it to make sure that it's in this sort of visible ASCII range. And so that's really what this data is. So this is a quick hack to store some binary information in a source file in such a way that it won't interfere with the compiler. And the Pixel game engine's had this since day one. Version 0 of the Pixel game engine has this. It was kind of necessary because we were using the font in the console game engine. And of course, in the console game engine, drawing text was trivial, right? Because it's a console, you just draw the text. But in the Pixel game engine, needed a way to do it. So it's really just a binary implementation of this sprite. Now, the problem becomes when you want to start doing the proportional font spacing. So if we go back to the text editor, here we've got the proportional font, and this is how it's always been. So this is every character here is 8 by 8 pixels. It all lines up very nicely, but you can see it looks quite open and spaced out. And this is how the Nintendo Entertainment System at the time, because the font is heavily inspired by that common font you saw in those games, you would see these open spaces, because it just would basically dump a pattern in the name table. And that's how it would position text on the screen. Fine, no problem at all. But it looks a lot nicer when you actually make it proportional, and that's what we did with the space thing too. So all of the GUI and space thing is all proportional. It looks tidier. It looks more professional. You see the I character here takes up far fewer pixels. Things look nicer. So there is now a need for some spacing information, and I included the spacing information. This time I didn't decide to sort of compress it down as much as I possibly could. I think there's definitely scope to compress this even further, because there's actually only about 6 different sizes in here. So if you know, there's definitely a way to squash that down if you wanted to sort of be clever about it. I've chosen not to be. So yes, the font, the text estimation algorithms always know that the height of the font is going to be 8, so it looks for new lines in order to work out how many lines there are in a particular string. And the width of the font depends on the mode you're in when you're drawing it. Uses this little lookup table to estimate where to position the font on the screen, but also work out how wide it is. Does the Pixel game engine use a graphics API? Well, it is a graphics API. So I mean, it uses OpenGL fundamentally, but it can use other things too. So on in Scripton, it's using OpenGL 3 for that, isn't it? There is a DirectX background as well, a renderer that somebody did, and we've played around with various different OpenGL versions. It's the idea is it abstracts away from the needing to know how OpenGL and these graphics APIs works. Oh, and Danderstein did a Vulkan version, I think, or was at least thinking about it. I don't know if it actually got. It did get finished. Yeah. Are you using VS Community? I use the Community editions. No problem at all. There's no restriction in the Community edition except for some of the more advanced database and now really the source code management features. You could do something like Java. I've moved away from Java. I used to love Java, but now Java as an example of GUI framework is a complete mess. You think C++ is bad, Java is worse. Even web developers like creating GUI, not using static HTML. We tolerate web developers here. I'm quite far behind, aren't I? Sorry about that. How do you get this string data? Is it something you decided on these characters? Yeah, I so just to answer that question, Alex, no problem at all. I just manually calculated it all at the time. So I created a quick routine to turn the bitmap image into a sequence of zeros and ones, and then I wrote another little routine to turn those zeros and ones into this lump of text. Berg12, hello. Use monospace C64 font for everything. Standard in. Yes, it's rather unusually modern of me, that one. DirectX 10 unfinished for PG. It's not done by me, so yeah, a lot of these the non-official renderers. So the Pixel Game Engine works by having a selection of renderers. Where am I looking? Oh, I'm actually looking in the Pixel Game Engine file. There is a way, or there was a way, to collapse some of these things down. So I've added, and I don't know if this works in other viewers, but I've added regions, which are some sort of like collapsible entity for mapping your code. So big files like this, you can add regions, and you can individually close down the regions. For example, I can take the history out. Nothing special, but sometimes can be quite convenient. I do actually, I know I've mentioned it before, but I do actually have a tool which is converting the bulk of the PG into a single header file. I've not talked about it and I've not released it yet, but we'll get around to it. Right, let's put something interesting on the screen for anybody that does turn up. And a text editor isn't necessarily the most interesting thing. Yeah, Dandestein, you did do the Vulkan version. I thought you did, yes, yeah. Yeah, see, that's and Dandestein hits on a really interesting point, and generally an interesting point about open source stuff. That a lot of people, you go to the Pixel Game Engine GitHub, and there's loads of pull requests. Loads of people want to contribute and submit interesting things. And I'm always willing to look at everything that pops up. If you don't know, if you go and do a pull request, it does appear on the Discord server as well. So lots of people can see that the pull request has happened. And I've had some criticism in the past that I don't accept them, and I don't. So that's the first thing to understand. I don't traditionally accept them. But I have taken the ideas from some of the pull requests, and I always credit if I do take an idea. So you'll see throughout the Pixel Game Engine header file, there's all sorts of little nods and things to people that have helped donate bits of code. So there you are, for example. So things do get pulled in, but I choose not to sort of let the community manage that. But that actually reminds me of something I was talking about on the server, and we'll come back to that. I don't want to sort of lose track here. But one of the problems with open source projects, and as Dandestein's pointed out, you don't want to have to sit and maintain it. So if you've made something quite complicated, and Dandestein's made quite a few bits and pieces for the Pixel Game Engine, that as soon as it goes out into the community, Dandestein's the only person that can really answer those questions, and there should be no pressure on anybody in this community to sort of have to answer things. And I know people are sort of jumping on the technology. It's great to see it's growing. Pixel Game Engine is supported. There's a lot of people that can talk about it, and I'm always there to talk about the documentation side of it. But all of the community add-ons and extras, I don't expect any members of the community to have to sit and support and hold other people's hands through it. So it's a difficult thing with open source projects, I think. How would PGE benefit from having Vulkan? Yes, it doesn't. 13 digits, it's okay. We're having a chilled out stream. I'm having an alcohol-free beer because I'm tired and I'm hot. What are we on temperature count? 28.1. See, I told you, it's going up. Going up. It's just too hot, and it's not very humid either. Although it's getting more humid. It does feel like it's more humid. Is it possible to use the cursor in a console application? Practically, me and my friend are making a game engine in the console, and I can't find much usage of the cursor beyond disabling the right-click menu. Well, I did a video specifically about mouse cursors in the command prompt. I found it very useful. Alex, yes, sorry about that. I did say I would get back to you on that. Alex has submitted a Pixel Game Engine version of the Arcade Retro Racer video, which was done in the console game engine. With all of these things, all these plans and everything else, there's a lot of things I want to get done. One of the things I'd like to do is all of the CG videos, I'd like to release a PG equivalent, which should be reasonably trivial, but it isn't. and I've just not got the time this year, so that's why we're doing these sort of streams now. Just turn on the AC. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, James, let's see if I can find that particular video. It's called Command Prompt Mouse. So if you didn't know, a lot of my earlier videos on the channel were done using nothing but the Windows command prompt.
Hello. A little late night update
there we go.
This week.
So where do we go? Get to the end. So we actually used it for dragging and dropping things.
Some land over here. It's much easier with the mouse than with the keyboard.
Oh, there we are. So, no, it's worth looking at. It talks about how you handle the event system in the background, because the Windows actually provides some tools to do that for you. Yeah, you can't post links very easily in the Twitch chat. Desp4, hello. You don't see a Vimto can in the video. I don't know how many have got Vimto cans in. Must be quite a few now. Be replacing them with Red Bull cans at this rate. 28.2. We should all have a big cheer every time it goes up by a 0.1 of a degree. So, I don't think we're going to get any coding done really tonight. It's too hot. Well, what was I going to talk about? Yes, good idea. Community idea. Right. It turns out that quite a lot of people watching this chat and a lot of people on the Discord server are using the Pixel Game Engine. Good stuff. But they also have lots of random functions. Sort of they create something that's a nice thing, and it's sort of they go, I want to include this in the Pixel Game Engine. Where can I go and do it? And, as I've just mentioned, I'm rather picky about what makes its way into the Pixel Game Engine for various maintenance reasons. So I always encourage people to do a Pixel Game Engine extension. Now, a Pixel Game Engine extension can be quite a complicated thing for somebody that's just written one function. They might just go, ooh, well, I can't be bothered with that. So, what do we think about this idea? I'm going to create, or maybe I should create, a repository on GitHub and actually allow public access to it. So we'll make it so that we can do pull requests, moderated pull requests, that sort of thing, which is just a single PEGX that's got all of these sort of odd and wacky community contributions in. And I think it'll be quite interesting because you'll have various members of the community trying to sort of fix each other's code and stuff. And so there might be a bit of friction there, but it'll also be, good learning experience for everybody. It's sort of be I don't know what we'll call it, but it's just a single file that's got all of these absolutely bonkers and nuts and useful functions which don't seem to have a home of their own. So I think that's what I think we'll set that up. It's a good way to get the community engaged with the GitHub at least. And it's a good way for me to learn how to do the GitHub stuff because I don't know how to do it. PGE Boost, yes. That's what we should call it, PGE Boost. Gian Lager. Don't worry, you can do the videos in any order really, it doesn't matter. OLC Boost. The problem with extensions, you cannot access the under the hood stuff. Well, it's not necessarily a problem. I mean, it's a problem for people like you, Magetsa, because, you're like one of the absolute key contributors to the Pixel Game Engine project. Yeah, OLC Swing. We'll have to come up with a good corny name for it or something. Gallimaufry. Is it a problem I want my icon to the window corner? So Magetsa and Morris on the Discord server, they put a lot of effort into getting icons shown in the Inscription version. And you say, where does that live now? I don't want that in the official version. I think there was more code to load this icon than there was in the entirety of the Pixel Game Engine. But it shouldn't just be abandoned as a sort of, well, that was fun and throw it out there. CGE, well, that kind of conflicts with console game engine, so yeah. That should be an option. What about Linux, though? What about Linux? Everything works on Linux. Linux is great, remember? Everything runs on Linux, and Linux solves every problem. That's what people keep telling me. I'm going to top this up. Yeah, it runs on Mac too. That's no problem. So I've got my Tesco alcohol-free beers here. They're actually called Shandies in the UK, so there's nothing... Oh, look at that. Yes. So, cheers, because it's a hot, hot day. Yeah, Pixel Game Engine works on Mac. And it works on Raspberry Pi. It's a bit slow. It works on... People have had it working on Nintendo Switch with some alterations. Yeah, it's pretty good. How's the melting going? I'm melting very well. Yeah, Dandestine, it is pretty much just soda. Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind some of the I mean, alcohol-free beer 20 years ago was disgusting. It was low effort by the manufacturers. It served no particular purpose. It was just awful. And it seems in the last 10 years, it's become quite a fashionable thing now to have low alcohol beers. I know a lot of people sort of go, that's a disgusting concept in its own right, but it's nonetheless, it's obviously good business for somebody, and some of them are quite good now. You don't necessarily need a dev kit if you're prepared to void your Switch. Cool, that's cool, Dandestine. Put some ice spheres in your beer. 28.3, yes, there we go. We've gone up to 28.3. Whew. What do you think about the Steam? I think it's rubbish. What a load of crap. Right? Who wanted it? Nobody. What market is it fulfilling? Nothing. Does anybody actually want handheld gaming devices anymore? No. I think the whole concept is just rubbish. So, yeah, not impressed with it. It's probably going to be very expensive. I noticed it's got these huge fan holes on the back of it, so I imagine it's actually not as portable as people would like it to be. On the whole, yeah, I thought it was... It's a cool bit of tech. There'll be an early generation of people will jump on it, no problem at all, but rubbish. Yeah, it looks heavy. Exactly. Why not just buy a laptop? You sent... I missed a few chats here. The alcohol-free beer is going to my head. OpenGL is supported on Switch, though. It will probably work. Well, I mean, you've got to think what's legit and what's not. So, producers like Nintendo and to some extent Apple do the same thing. They have walled gardens around their hardware. They don't want you just installing any random bit of software on there. Now, if I wanted to get Pixel Game Engine adopted, in fact, well, I'll let you into a thing here. I was actually approached by a company called Fuse, and they'd seen the channel and they were keen to get me involved in their output. Now, Fuse released a basic package, the language basic for the Switch, and that has Nintendo's blessing, so they're allowed to do that, and they release assets and games and sound effects and all that sort of thing for people to sort of hack with it and play with it. We'd need to do something similar for Pixel Game Engine, but I don't see Nintendo ever going for that, simply because it's C++. So you make it not easy to run in a walled garden. You'd have to sort of virtualize it. Very tricky. Just buy a raw brick instead. Yeah, I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to be that popular. I think it'll disappear pretty quickly. You'll get some of the turbo nerds getting really excited. Oh man, yeah, I can run Linux on it, and then it's my portable hacking station as they run around Washington DC trying to hack Wi-Fi networks as if they're in the Die Hard 4. But that's fine. Let them be. They'll be happy with that. Yeah, if somebody was giving them away for free, I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't say no. Also, if you've not found that PC gaming, and controversial territory here, I'm aware of that, but PC gaming in general is not good, right? I look on Steam, and it's the same games on Steam now as there were 10 years ago. Where are all the new and interesting titles coming from? There's a lot of indie titles, and that's good. I'm an indie developer, and I aspire to get a game on the Steam store, and nobody will download it or pay for it. But there's a lot of just rubbish on there. And that's just, I think if you have this incredibly open platform, that's the problem. You just get lots of rubbish, don't you? See, the Steam Deck, that's very expensive. Very expensive. €679. Cheaper than a Nintendo Switch. That's not quite accurate. Hello world, Jared. If you did release your game on Switch, I'm sure you could somehow make it work. Well, I'm all for actually doing things as legitimately as possible. So if I wanted to do that, I would have to sort of negotiate and pay the right people and make sure the right licenses are valued. Because if I don't set that example, then nobody will care about sort of the way I want things done with my technology. Is there a reason C++ wouldn't run it? No, of course not. It's just letting it run natively. So you would need the standard library equivalent, I guess whatever ARM equivalent that it's compiled on. But it's whether the operating system on the Switch would allow you to do most of the things you want to do. You want to open a file? Well, probably not as easy as it should be, because they would lock down that functionality. I'm speculating. I'm not a Switch dev, but if I had that kind of technology, I would make sure it was as locked down as possible. To try and avoid people doing nasty things with it, like they did with the PlayStation Portable. Clearly not looking in the... Yeah, but you play menu games, Danicron. Your idea of a good night in is watching a number 7 turn into a 9 and move across the screen. PC gaming is a lot better in the sense that the conversion of old games is easier. Yeah, well, they say that. Now, I downloaded a few old games, and they're meant to run now because Steam have made some fantastic technology advices. And they don't. They either run in these little tiny windows in the corner of the screen, or you get some sort of graphical glitches. I mean, you played like Deus Ex, the original. Great game, love it to bits, but now it's almost unplayable because it's so dark, and the textures are all green. So, yeah, it's just not as good as it could be. Does the C++ standard library work on the Switch? I guess. Well, it would have to be implemented by the vendor, so I imagine there'll be some... for example, on Windows, it's not like the C++ standard library just works immediately with the processor. If you use the file system part of the library, it was a bit of an extra, that's obviously got to talk to the Windows operating system, so there'll be some very Windows-specific things going on in there. Gaming on the whole has been on the decline. Yeah, possibly. I mean, old school, I know these are tired, repeated arguments. I come from an era where when the game was released, there was never any updates. It was what it was. It had to work. And now I'm a bit fed up with updates, particularly on AAA games. So I enjoyed Final Fantasy VII, the re-release, the remake. And every time it had an update, there was like another 14 gigabytes to download. Of course, I'm downloading it at the same time as everybody else is downloading it, so not that good. Consoles have the same lame games. Well, yeah, they do have the same lame games, but they also have quite a lot of exclusives as well, and people sort of... They know they're going to sell them on consoles. The trouble is with PC is they're just pirated straight away, right? So if you probably have like a 2 or 3 day window to actually make any money on PC. But on a console, maybe it's a little bit different. What's the most modern game I've enjoyed? That's a good question. What have I played? I've just been saying I played the Final Fantasy remake. What have I enjoyed this year? I was enjoying Flight Simulator, the new flight sim. Play a bit of Elite Dangerous, and these are PC games. I fully appreciate that. On my PlayStation, that was where I got Final Fantasy 4. But I've not really done much gaming this year, which is a bit of a shame. And also, I'm a little bit out of touch with the gaming market now. I don't know what's coming out that I'm going to enjoy. We did do a Discord stream of all the Uncharted games. So we beat Uncharted 1 through 4 all on the Discord stream. That was at the start of lockdown. That was very good. Uncharted 4 is something else. Man, that's just it's a work of art. Piracy legitimately doesn't impact sales. Yeah, well, maybe. Wait until you're a software dev and then somebody actually steals your software. It does annoy me greatly when I buy a new PlayStation game, and the first thing it does is download. Yeah, I mean, basically now, when you can go to the supermarket and buy the game, you're just buying the download token, aren't you? You're not actually buying any data. Yeah, Danny Coyne. See, I don't know how easy it is to pirate for console. It's not, as I say, it's not a world I go into. I do confess, I did chip my own PlayStation 1 back in the day. But it's also rather oddly, even though it was chipped, you still couldn't get hold of the games for it. So it was chipped mainly because I was curious about how did you chip them. It's also that at that time I learnt how to solder as well, and how to fix the solder. If you do ever do any soldering, one of the things you'll find yourself doing more than actual soldering is repairing the bad soldering because of all the mistakes that you've made. So it's a good skill to learn soldering because you learn coping skills and de-stressing skills, because very quickly you're going to end up in this big tangled hot mess of molten metal that's damaging all of your components, and you have to deal with it or else it's going to get expensive and you're going to get fired. Right, where are we up to? Dragon Eye, now? Oh, I don't know. Sort of losing plot. Good that the chat's going so fast, but no, it was a we effort, Alex. We did it, right? There was a good community effort getting us through Uncharted 3 and 4 there. Ferocious Fang, hello. Yes, it's unbearable. Oh, we've gone up as well, 28.4. It's unbearably hot today. So that's why we're just not doing any code. No, it's not going to happen. Have a look at Metro Exodus. So I thought we'd just have one chatting with the community and having some discussions. We've talked about a few bits and pieces as well. So I think I'll do this community GitHub repo with an extension in, and it's an extension that everybody can just contribute to. And so if you're one of those guys that's got a various algorithms, like something like drawing an arc, that's one that's been recently. I know 2 or 3 people have done that. Then let's have them in there and let's get the best arc drawing routine we can possibly have. And I have quite a large selection of computer games in my house. In fact, there's a list. It's an incomplete list on the Discord server in a spreadsheet of all the games I've got. Let's see if I can dig up that list. Hang on a sec. Yeah. Share. Anyone can link. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm just going to post this link. So this is an incomplete link to everything on the... everything up until the point I made that spreadsheet. Have I worked on a commercial... No, I've never been a games developer professionally. Piracy has an impact. Okay, piracy debate is going on. Yeah, piracy is an interesting way to sort of advertise games. I think a lot of people justify their piracy by going, oh, well, I only get it to try the game and then I'll go and buy it. I don't think actually many people do that. Is it very important for a programmer to understand low-level circuits? I think it helps. I think not necessarily circuits, but having a really solid appreciation of digital logic and understanding how logic systems work and understanding how timing diagrams work too. Because as soon as you start sort of appreciating a good data sheet with a timing diagram in and some buses, that you start to sort of realize that everything that you're doing is this sort of connected bank of switches and you're switching things on and off. And it does make you think a little differently. $28.5, definitely gone up. Who else did arc drawing? Yes, there was somebody else, Alta. It wasn't just you. In fact, there's a couple of pull requests recently who've they're drawing filled circles using arcs. So what they're actually doing is clipping the circle to the visible screen. It's a necessary thing. Yeah, Altered Speedy. I think the Uncharted ones, they were really good streaming. They were good fun. They were good fun to play as well. Currently have a course on microprocessor architecture and assembly. Yeah, I think one of the things to get used to that people go, oh, it's assembly language. Assembly language is always the same, right? The syntax looks a bit different and the commands are a bit different, but the principles never change. Unless you've got some absolutely esoteric, wacky processing system, but you won't, because that's not what people develop stuff on. So it can be a bit strange, but once you look past that, you suddenly realise, oh, it's just jumps, it's branches, it's compares, it's stacks, it's pointers, and once you get those sort of things in, it doesn't matter. You can program on anything. Oh well, yeah, we don't talk about AT&T syntax. Well, you see, if it uses AT86, build an AT86 emulator. It's a great way to learn, firstly, about the microprocessor, how to program it, and also how to actually build cool stuff. Hang on, I've got a ping in the Discord. What have we got here? Oh, some old study about piracy doesn't hurt sales. Right. I don't buy it. Well, it says 1 million instructions. Now, arguably, the NES, humble 8-bit 6502, has 256 instructions. But that's only because you've got to stop thinking of an instruction in terms of it being a function, right? So it's easy to start thinking, that your processor is effectively this library of functions. It isn't, right? The instruction that you're giving it is just a set of zeros and ones, which is controlling other parts of that circuit. It's switching bits of that circuit on and off, or it's telling another, now on more modern architecture, it's telling another sub-circuit a sequence of things to switch on and off. So those instructions, they're not sort of this made-up library function. So there's nothing stopping you providing sort of all these sort of oddball combinations of things you wouldn't normally expect. And of course, that's what they did on the NES. These were these illegal opcodes. Is it really like you say that you always have to use triangles and use them to paint the shape? Maybe I'll ask too soon. Always think about it. Yeah, triangles are fantastic for hardware because they are the simplest geometric primitive, particularly in 2D. It is 3 points. So as soon as you go to 4 points, you can draw 4 points with, well, it's a square, but you can draw it with 2 triangles. So once you've got this sort of fundamental unit of a triangle, you can optimize hardware and software to draw triangles very, very quickly. And then once you've got that fundamental unit sorted out, you can then construct everything out of that fundamental unit. So yeah, triangles are pretty cool. $28.5. We've gone down one. Did we get up to 28.6? At some point, and I can physically feel it. It's unbearable. Now, where did we get? I was going to draw something, but we've not really got much time left. So all we showed today was was the text editor, which is not particularly exciting in its own right. I'm just seeing if I've got any other sort of interesting code. I showed you the list box. Well, maybe that's one thing. We can just get maybe a couple of minutes of coding in on Space Thing whilst we're here. Because on Space Thing, there's a little aesthetic glitch on the list box I'm not happy with. And perhaps you can see it, maybe you can't. That I don't particularly like the double line going down on this side of the scroll bar. So if I zoom out a little bit. So the scroll bar itself is fine, but then the items in the list are occurring in this box. And we can also see that the selection area is not quite right either. So I might go and tidy those up. We'll have 5 minutes trying to fix up just a bit of code. Why not? Oh, OLC shader. Could you show OLC shader? I'm just going to see, let me just make sure it compiles first. OLC shader. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's see if that runs. Just set that as my starter project. I'm just conscious of not sort of revealing too much about what's in this particular solution, because it's sort of all my future videos and things like that. So I'm just making sure that it's not seen. So if I set that as the starter project, does this actually work? If it doesn't work, I'm not going to try and start debugging it today. Okay. Good. So when I was sort of announcing that the channel was slowing down a little bit, I showed a video of was this, I think, where we've got in real time here some pixel shading going on, and this is genuine hardware pixel shaders being used on the in the Pixel game engine. And this particular demonstration, I've got 5 different pixel shaders, genuine GLSL pixel shaders, doing the thing. And you can see we get quite nice performance out of it. So this is it is release mode. It's drawing these as decals, and in these regions, it's applying these pixel shader effects. Very simple effects. Blur here. This one's meant to look like scan lines. This one just does a grayscale calculation, but a proper one, where it's got that weird division in. This is just a threshold operation, and this, I think, was a kernel edge detect. I can't quite remember. Oh, yes, and it was all on a transform view, which you didn't see in the video, but the idea being, just to sort of demonstrate it genuinely is, those regions are pixel shaded differently. Now, the Pixel game engine's always supported the concept of a pixel shader, but in software. So let's not confuse the two. These are not software pixel shaders, these are genuine hardware ones. So we can have a look at some code and see how how you would go about using this library, perhaps. The text editor was awesome. Well, thank you for that. So let's have a look at this code. So I'll have to try and pull it up. It's awkward looking at code sort of out of context. Let's stick you in there. So this is the actual program that's using the extension, and it's not entirely finished yet. So that's why it's not been released, but it's not far off. And so the principle is, I'm going to have a mouthful of beer, hang on. The principle is you have everything's done with decals. So a decal is just a texture stored on a GPU. Now, traditional Pixel game engine applications, it's sort of a very one-way thing. You take your GPU texture and you draw it to the screen. But of course now on modern architectures, and particularly when using shaders, you actually want to sort of shade things to other textures. So you would take your source textures, manipulate them with the shader, and either draw them to the screen or draw them to another texture somewhere on the GPU. And so that required a little bit of a change into how the Pixel game engine stores decals. It doesn't change anything for anybody that's ever used a decal, but it just sort of internally changed a few things. And so the idea was that we have the shader PegX itself as an object. That's the thing that's going to manage how the PegX works. And we have various effects. And these renderables, they're just regular OLC renderables, no difference there. We've got a transform view and the things to handle the bouncing around. Trying to think what the 200 by 200 was here. Okay, so these were, it's been a while since I've worked on this. These were the textures. The textures always required, sorry, the effects always required a target texture. I think that's what it was. Is that what it was? Yeah. So because these are just renderables. So the idea is it's creating a renderable 200 by 200. That's the little window of sort of shaded output you can see on the screen. So they're special, the regular renderables, but they're now created as sort of blank, empty textures, just to register them somewhere on the GPU. Now, I can load the shaders one of two ways. So the first way is I'm going to provide some like built-in standard ones. So these, like this with this make effect ones, stuff people use regularly, like box blur. These are going to be provided as part of the shader file itself. So let's go and have a look at the actual PegX. It's actually, you can see it's quite a long, complicated Pixel game engine extension. This one. So in here, I've got the standard OLC namespace. There's going to be this effects namespace, which I'm not quite sure that remains the name. And this contains the GLSL code for various different effects. So I thought it'd be quite useful to have lots of ready-made effects good to go. Now there's some interesting additional properties required here, because if you've got an effect that has properties you can change, those need to be somehow exposed to the user. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Now the effect needs to use the OpenGL 3.3 rendering system in order to work, because OpenGL 1 of course didn't support shaders. So there's a lot more sort of loading up OpenGL stuff going on, specifically the shader handling stuff. Hang on, I've just had a ping. I shall see what this is. Don't know. It pings all the time, and I don't know what half of them mean. And the idea of the shader PegX is that you prime it with, well, I want to render to this decal. These are the source decals. This is the effect I want to use. Now go. And that's it. It's as simple as that. So there's a lot of code here which is handling sort of the buffers and the texture arrays and sort of the manipulation of the data itself, and the fact that I wanted it in some ways to sort of correspond to drawing routines that we've already got familiar with. We need to look at the actual source application to see why and how this works. So in on user update, here we go. We've got our shader. We're setting our target decal to be this particular normal bouncers at the moment. We then tell it which effect we want it to use. In case normal, it means no effect. Just behave like Pixel Game Engine as normal, and then clear. Now this won't clear the screen. This will clear the target decal. Clear, of course, is an operation, so it will actually clear it with respect to whatever effect is currently being used. So when I want to draw the things, I'm using the normal shader, so I'm drawing the bouncing things. Here we've got the draw decal. It's using the transform view as before. I pass in the shader object, and I pass in the parameters I want to draw to it. And this is not the regular draw decal. This is this special draw decal now, which is part of the shader extension. So that knows how to set things up. Here we've got, it's just a bit more interesting here because here we're doing the actual effects. So I want to draw this one with box blur. So I'm setting the target decal. I'm saying use this renderable as your target. This is the effect I want you to use. And these are the drawing routines I'm going to do during that period, and here I'm ending. So the effect is applied for anything between the start and end here with that particular effect. Now anything that gets drawn by the Pixel Game Engine using the shader drawing routines will be subject to that particular hardware shader. So it actually becomes quite a simple way of using the shader. So these are the different windows we saw on the screen. The principle of this is I actually draw all the bouncers to a decal in the background first, and then I use that background decal as a source then for all of these individual effects, which just take a small sub-region out of that background and apply their own effects to that sub-region. That's why it looks like you've got 5 visible windows looking through the information. And that's it. What you end up with after all of this is just regular decals, regular Pixel Game Engine decals. So I can just draw those to the screen in the right place. And that's quite a nice thing. You can actually render to the decals. So this will allow us to do sort of all sorts of weird warps and manipulations, because we know in Pixel Game Engine we can draw decals in many, many different ways. But what we haven't been able to do is change the content of the decal very dynamically. Well, now, of course, we can. The decal itself is a render target. So that opens up all sorts of new things to think about. Right, I need to catch up with quite a bit of chat here. A sip. Franzinch, hello. Super RTK, what are we doing today? Well, today it's too hot to code, so we've just basically had a chat and a talk and a discussion about a few things that's going on. Gruffalo, once you have a shaded texture on the GPU, can you bring it back to the CPU? Yes, you can. It's slow. But that's kind of the point. So once you've got this ability to read and write to GPU memory, you can kind of do everything in GPU memory after that. But if you want to draw like draw a circle or a line, that gets quite tricky. But yes, you can bring it back. So you can do that now rather oddly in the current Pixel Game Engine. You'll notice that there is now, alongside the update function of the decal, is now also something like sprite update, which will actually pull the decal back from the GPU, although it's semantically meaningless at the moment in the Pixel Game Engine. well, that was the shader graph. See, Danderstein's very astute. He's probably one of the smartest people I know, and he started, straight away. You can see where's this going, and the idea is yes, it can sort of form a bit of a shader graph out of it. Now, I've not got the tools to do that, but there's nothing stopping those tools from being developed quite easily, because that's sort of the principle of how this all glues together. What we don't see here is setting any of the properties of the shaders. Now that's the bit that I still need to do. It's done, it's just not exposed. So if you want to set a particular, for box blur, how wide do you want the blur? How many iterations? Could be a parameter that's set. So we need to make those settable too. And once we've got those properties exposed, then yes, you could automatically chain these into some interesting structure. So you could actually make it into a node-based framework. Update sprite, was that what it was called? Zarconic, hi Javid. First time I see you live stream. Well, sorry, but we are going to be ending, I think. That's a shame because it's now got to 28.7 degrees. It's been too hot. And I've enjoyed chatting with you all. Oh, I should mention, yes, there will be a game jam. The official code jam will be happening in its usual time, which is usually about the end of August. So it is going to be happening. Obviously, this year I've been busy with other things, so that's why we've not had as many YouTube videos this year. What humidity? Yeah, well, it says what the humidity is, 61%. So the top number on the temperature cam is 28.7. The bottom one there is 61%. So if I drag that, see, I can move that there, so you can all see. There we are. That's how hot it currently is, and that's indoors with my window on. I'm hoping that this year's Game Jam will get to see a lot of people doing stuff with the Pixel Game Engine and in Inscription. In fact, I might even have an incentive bonus point for people that do that. And we'll see how much disruption that causes amongst the community. Ha ha ha. Right, until then, I'm going to go and have to take all of my clothes off now and sit in a cold shower for the next hour, because I'm soaking wet through. I'm absolutely boiling. So I will bid you all farewell and take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.